Healthy hip function is one of the most important indicators when it comes to quality of life as we age, not only because our hips are the conjunction between our torso and our lower body, meaning that any misalignment there will lead to problems both in your upper and lower body, but also because injury and lack of mobility in your hips means that you will be moving a lot less, and moving a lot less is a surefire way for your health to decline with time. So today we're gonna check out how to get some extraordinary hip mobility going, keep them healthy, strong, loose and limber, while increasing your range of motion and increasing your quality of life as we move on. There are multiple different things we need to keep in mind. We have hip extension, hip flexion, and rotation, which are three of the most foundational movements our hips will go through. Being seated in an elevated position will help you if you're suffering from decreased range of motion to work on your internal hip rotation. If you are more advanced and have a little bit more range of motion, it would be advisable to do these exercises in a deep squat or a resting squat position. Starting with our internal hip rotation, bringing your knee right in front of your adjacent foot. And this moves us to one of the most effective hip mobility exercises that you could ever do, which is the 90-90 deep squat switch, combining both internal and external hip rotation from a low to the ground position, combining both mobility as well as strength and control over the surrounding musculature, making it one of the more holistic hip mobility exercises and one of the staples of hip mobility in general. And if you can keep your balance in this position, adding spinal rotation, specifically lumbar spinal rotation, which is tightly connected to your hip mobility, will help you release some of the tension in the surrounding musculature and build even more control in and around these positions. And before we can move on to the main course, we still need to work on our hip extension and hip flexion, elevating your thoracic spine to have more space for lumbar movement, to lower deeper into spinal extension, and combining both hip flexor activation with glute activation, which are your extensors. With that, we're also covering our lower abdominal activation, which in turn is just as important when it comes to hip flexibility, hip mobility and health, as is our lumbar spinal mobility. This way, all the agonists and antagonists are covered, which you will need for the main exercises. And there you can gauge if you are truly advancing in your workouts, if you have problems when it comes to rotation, extension and flexion, and where you need to work on more or less. Now, there are three main exercises we can use to cover most of our hip mobility and hip health in general. And the first one is the Jefferson curl, or specifically a weighted posterior chain stretch. Keep in mind that having enough space for healthy hip flexion means that you have enough flexibility in their antagonists to raise your leg and to flex your hips. Working on your biceps, gluteal and lower spinal flexibility will help you achieve that space for hip flexion and help you strengthen your hips without being impeded through a lack of flexibility. And mainly for these exercises, we will be working our way up to a maximum of 50% of our own body weight, because we are working on mobility and not hypertrophy. With this exercise, are we not only stretching our posterior chain, but we are activating every single muscle in it, making them stronger as well. So if you don't remember anything else, having healthy hamstring and posterior chain flexibility is a foundation of healthy hip mobility. Next up, we have weighted ATG squats. As to grass, we want to go as low as we can with both feet flat on the ground. If your heels start raising from the floor, you might be suffering from a lack of ankle mobility or from a lack of strength in your core or anterior chain musculature to keep you fully upright. Over time, this should get better. If you cannot squat as to grass, elevating your heels will help you immensely in getting lower, achieving full hip flexion, and over time you can decrease this elevation below your heels until you can flatten both feet on the ground and get fully down into a deep squat position. We are still staying with 50% of our body weight for this exercise because, as we said, these are more about mobility and less about hypertrophy or strength training. Which brings us to our third and one of the most effective exercises you can do for hip mobility in general, which are elevated weighted lunges. Not only are we adding the tiniest bit of external hip rotation so we can get deeper into that position, stretching out our glutes and the upper insertions of our hamstrings, adding the tiniest bit of lumbar mobility as well, but the increased range of motion also helps build a little bit more strength while simultaneously working on our flexibility and, most importantly, our coordination and control over these muscles. And switching the weight from the left side to the right side will add a little bit more core engagement, which is just as important when it comes to healthy hip mobility and healthy hip function. Having gone through all of these, we can now combine the 90-90 switch with resistance, starting out as usual with low resistance, but using a barbell, because that will require even more balance from our core and will add a lot more control aspects to this exercise. Being able to perform a complete 90-90 switch with added resistance as a barbell will be one of the most advanced hip mobility exercises you will have ever done and will reap the most benefits over time if you can do it correctly. I would advise to slow it down, because not only are we working on our hips, but we're also working on our knee and ankle mobility, as well as all the surrounding musculature, even adding spinal mobility up to thoracic rotation. Meaning that we have a lot of moving parts, and being able to do this in a controlled manner will help us immensely, but can also increase the injury risk if we are not careful. So keep the weight low, slow it down, and work your way up through progressive overload as if you were doing any sort of hypertrophy exercises. Now, additionally, having gone through all of these, that doesn't mean that we have done everything we can for our hips. We can work on static stretching, ballistic stretching, dynamic stretching that can help us keep our hips more healthy as we age. If you can incorporate most of these exercises 1 to 2 times a week, you will not only strengthen your legs, you will work on all the lower body joints when it comes to their mobility, control, and the flexibility of the surrounding musculatures, decreasing your risk of injury, increasing your quality of life, and decreasing any sort of pain that is connected to tightness and a lack of control in these areas. So please take care of your hips. And with that said, sadly, that's all the time I have left for you today. However, if you like the video and subscribe, and please guys, check out other videos on this channel, because we literally have new ones every single day, which means that I will see you tomorrow. Captain Cairo, peace out.